Okay, I think we'll call the meeting to order if we can. Tonight, agenda review first. Anything else to answer tonight?
No, but we probably do want to do non-public for one item.
Okay,
I'm gonna
okay,
just have it updated for you.
okay. Tonight we're here to, do I need this or not? Can you guys hear me okay?
I can hear you, but she was a little.
Well, all right, if she has to speak, then I'll talk into it anyway, so we're fine.
Tonight we're here to discuss the two petition warrant articles that were on the warrant at the deliberative session. And the first one we're going to talk about is the budget committee warrant article. And that was amended at the deliberative session. And what you're going to be voting on in March reads as follows. To see if the Wentworth Regional School District will vote to create a budget committee wherein the state committee would serve in an advisory-only capacity to the Wentworth Regional School District School Board and have 5 members plus 1 member from the school board. The school board will appoint the initial members within 30 days of the election, including the members from the school board. And the advisory committee members' terms will expire at the next annual meeting, at which point the school board may reappoint. That was the amended version at the deliberative session. The school board does not recommend passing this petition warrant article. The school board does not recommend this article. This is not the first time the warrant has been included as a petition warrant article of this nature, and each time it has been soundly defeated. The most recent petition warrant article was in 2010, which was resoundingly defeated 2293 to 1691. This decision has already been made. The school board is elected by the people to operate the schools. Taxpayers already have chosen their representatives and put them in place. Because of their involvement with the programs, they are in the best position to make the judgments about what reasonable needs are. A budget committee, just another layer of government, is not in position to make judgments about the legal needs and appropriate programs for children. They do not have enough involvement to make informed decisions. The school board holds several meetings where the budget is discussed and questions and input are welcome. Meetings where budget is specifically discussed start in the fall with 3 finance committee meetings, during which administration meets with the finance committee to discuss their recommendations, followed by the preliminary budget hearing, the budget adoption hearing, and the deliberative session. All school board meetings, including these meetings, are open to the public. Thus, any citizen can express their opinion in the budget process, the development process. A budget committee provides a layer between the school board and the construction of the budget, giving individual community members less of a voice. The Wentworth Regional School District is an SP2 district where everyone has a vote on the budget, plus an open meeting to make changes in it prior to the actual vote. A budget committee can have the impact of lessening the value of the individual vote by taking away the opportunity to vote on certain items removed or altered by a budget committee. In other words, every citizen has a voice through their vote, and the voice need not be filtered by another layer of government bureaucracy. The school board urges voting no on the budget committee warrant article. I'd certainly entertain any questions on the budget committee article itself. We've been at this for a long time, and part of the second warrant article for a tax cap also is one that we're going to discuss. That was modified. In fact, I'll go right into that first, and then we'll discuss both of those. I think that's probably the most appropriate way to do it. Article 12 reads, again, this is the amended version from the deliberative session. To see if the Wentworth Regional School District will vote for RSA 32:B, paragraph B, semicolon 5, paragraph B, to adopt a tax cap whereby the governing body or budget committee shall not submit a recommended budget that increases the amount to be raised by local taxes based upon the prior fiscal year's actual amount of local taxes raised by more than 25%. That is the amended version from the deliberative session. And even though it would be nice to have a 25% tax cap, we're not recommending passing this budget, this warrant article either. There's no need for it. We have tried to be extremely frugal in developing our budgets, and I do have some numbers here. But, We've been looking at our overall budget increases. We did have a fairly large increase in 2011 to 2012 budget of 5.57%. Following year of 1.14%, the year after 1.343%, following year 0.97%, next year 2.28%, the following year 1.85%, 2017, 2018, 2.29%, last year was 3.81%, and this year's projected increase is 3.32%. And I know a lot of people are going to be, they're tired of hearing this part of my comment, but this has to do with the New Hampshire retirement system. Back in the early 70s, when the retirement system was first put in place, the state of New Hampshire said that they would pay for a portion of the teacher's contribution. And that held true up until 2010, 2011. Up until that point, the state was paying 35% of the cost of the retirement plan for the teachers. 2010, 2011, they reduced it from 35% to 25%. The following year, they reduced it from 25% to 0. So the state is no longer contributing anything to the teachers' retirement system. And for this district, over that period of time, the taxpayers of this district have been asked to pay an additional $5,254,543 out of your pocket. The state legislature did that. If we looked at just this year's budget, with the 3.32% increase recommended, within our budget is $784,000 if we tack the 35% on, that the state is reneging on. If we reduced our budget by that $784,000, our increase would be from 3.32% to 1.83%. So we put together a very frugal budget. We do everything we can to minimize the tax impact for the taxpayers of our district, but our legislature continues to take money out of our pockets. I'm a resident of this district as well, and every dollar that the state does not fund comes out of your pocket as well. The other thing that the state has done, they have taken our stabilization money, which is an effort to help the less fortunate communities as far as property values and all, and the ability to pay. They're reducing that by 4% a year for the next 25 years. I'm not sure exactly what the Effingham reduction was this year, but in Ossipee, that was a reduction in Ossapee's take of $43,000. Okay, the local taxpayers have to pay that because the state is no longer going to pay it. And that continues from now for the next 22 years. I think it's been a couple of years that they've done it. So again, the state legislature has decided that they no longer will be funding this. So this is all money that is coming out of your pocket. We're doing the best we can to produce a budget that is effective, that we can provide the proper education for our children, that we're following all of the state and federal regulations when it comes to special education and everything else. But when the state starts taking money away from us, it makes it very, very difficult to come to a budget that we can all live with. So I'd be happy to answer any questions on those particular items. Yes, sir.
I'm Diane Smith from Brookfield.
Excuse me.
So I'm the person who submitted both of these petition warrant articles. I drafted the Budget Committee warrant article, and folks that I had been working with on concerns about the costs of the school district to the communities had an interest in the 2% cap, tax cap. Can I put this down? Too many papers and I didn't want to drop them. A couple of things I'd like to discuss about this. First of all, the change of the Budget Committee from one that would represent each community in the same manner in which the current school board is constructed was changed at the deliberative session to be not only fewer members but also an advisory committee. And as such, I don't support that warrant article, and I would hope that others wouldn't. I frankly think that that would be a waste of everybody's time. But I think that there is a value to having a budget committee. If that were not the case, I think that 5 of the 6 towns in the school district most likely would not have budget committees. Brookfield, where I live, is the only one that does not have a budget committee. So that being said, my concern is, I had multiple concerns about the costs associated with the school district. One of the largest concerns that I had was the lack of predictability in what the cost would be for Brookfield, and presumably the same for other communities in the district, on an annual basis, prior to the community developing their budget for the coming year, for the following year, and considering what the tax rates would be. So I had developed a graphic in support of the tax cap article, which, and I didn't bring an awful lot of copies, but I have one. I actually created one of these for Effingham, and I will distribute that after I'm done, where the articulated concern for the tax cap, shifting now to the tax cap issue, was that the consumer price index hadn't risen much beyond 2% on average over the period of time per year, over a 10-year period, yet in the town that this gentleman was from, the impact for the cost to that community had risen like 40%, 30 or 40%. And so what I did, I looked at this a little bit differently, because the tax cap would have been not on the budget. It would have been on the amount assessed to the local communities. And furthermore, I should also add, and I should have articulated this at the deliberative session, that the RSA that governs the local tax cap very clearly states in, this is RSA 32:5-B, number 3, the legislative body may override the cap, the legislative body being the voters at the deliberative session, in an SB2 setting, may override the cap by the usual procedures applicable to annual meetings and deliberative sessions of the legislative body. The provisions of this section shall not limit the legislative body authority to increase or decrease the amount of any appropriation or the total amount of all appropriations. So as usual, it's the voters that have the say in the legislative body in what the budget will be. So, but the tax cap as it's currently constructed at 25% instead of 2% is meaningless, and I would suggest that it not pass either. But I wanted to go a little bit further on, and I've been now, this is my, let's see, Wolfboro, Brookfield, this is the 3rd meeting you will have had, and I've been at all 3. And I've listened to Mr. Woodmer's comments, and I have to take issue with some of the things that he said. I'm not challenging your comments and your numbers, but you talked a few minutes ago about the percentage increases of the budget over time. And I didn't look at the percentage increases of budget. Again, I was focused on what it costs the taxpayers, the local tax burden. And in fact, those numbers are notably different. And for, let's see, you had said 3.81% last year. Well, the local tax burden had gone up 6.4%. The budget had gone up at 3.81. And the year before that, he said it was 2.29, and the actual change in the tax burden had gone up 5.9%. So, you know, I can appreciate somebody who's looking at it from the overview, looking at the gross budget. The people who are paying the taxes that support the school district, us, presumably, most of you are paying taxes, are worried about what it's going to cost us when that bill comes from the town. And that's why I focused on the total tax, on the local tax burden, as the tax cap would have. I had mentioned also, and I'm jumping ahead a little bit from what you, I don't know if you were going to address this or not. It's this, again, the red line, the dramatic change from year to year in what the tax burden, this is for the total school district, was one of my concerns. Because frankly, presumably it's similar in other towns, but in Brookfield, when it's time to come to a decision on what our budget's going to be, we're looking at what the total picture is going to be, and we need that number to be somewhat predictable. So from the school district, that predictability was missing. And I had noticed, we had had a discussion in Brookfield, and also it started in Wolfboro at these hearings, about the undesignated fund balance, wherein the school district, where if they have money left over at the end of the year, typically has used that excess funds that were collected from the taxpayers for that year that just ended to help offset the tax cost going forward. Well, at the last meeting, it was pointed out that several of those years, we were talking about over $1 million. And those were probably the years when this red line went below as a negative number on the increase, because it was so, there was so much carryover that it depressed the cost needed to be funded for that year. Yet, not having a buffer, as we have in Brookfield, where there's a certain amount of money that's not set aside, but it's left there to offset the tax rate as necessary, but it's not used every year. So my request was for the school board to consider using that undesignated fund balance, keeping some in reserve to modulate the tax rate impact to the communities from year to year. It's not like it's our money, it's just going to be sitting there so that we don't take a hit in some year when there's an unexpected expense, or suddenly federal money dries up in a year. That it's a buffer for future tax rates. And I would ask the board again to consider that in the future. In the course of discussion, in Brookfield, which was the last meeting, there was one of the gentlemen in the audience pointed out that these two tax cap issues are symptomatic of what he called the elephant in the room. And that, what he was referring to is the cost distribution formula for the school district. As you probably know, it is distributed amongst the communities based on 25% equalized valuation, and the 75% is based on the average daily membership, or ADM. And there was a bit of a discussion as a result of that meeting. It was brought out, Mr. Woodmer used Tufton Borough as an example initially of expressing a concern about the cost per student and how that, I wrote down the numbers.
I have them right here. The Tufton Borough currently is paid $25,200 per student. Wolfboro is $22,596 per student. New Durham is $16,971. Brookfield $16,516. Ossipee is $14,747 per student. And Effingham is $12,914 per student.
Thank you. So I remembered that from the presentation, from the slideshow, from the deliberative session. Didn't remember the numbers, but I remember that was one of the slides. And I didn't know where the numbers came from, and I wasn't paying much attention to it. But after the meeting in Brookfield, I looked at those numbers and I thought, how did they get those? And so I started doing a little bit of research and found that when I went to the state DOE, Department of Education website, it turns out that there's multiple ways to get to, for the same school year, the last school year, 2 different numbers for the cost per student per town. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that that is, and it turns out, so here's the, oh, I can bring it up here with me. Sorry, it's over there. In some cases, it's subtracting out transportation costs, and it just, 2 different sets of formulas. And ultimately, it seemed like more of a metric to compare the cost of providing an adequate education, stripping away all of the extraneous costs, and I'm not quite sure where the limit is, to have a comparison among school districts. But its meaning of cost per student per town is, no offense, but it is truly meaningless in the context of what it costs, because it's not the town that's paying per student. It's not the town that's paying these taxes. It's you and me. It's the taxpayers. So I spent a little bit more time looking at this, and I do have a handout, so excuse me for a moment. And what I looked at was, excuse me, let me finish describing this. It's the taxpayer's impact, the cost per in-town student under both the current distribution formula and an alternative cost distribution formula. And I used actual data provided by the school district for school fiscal year 19, the one for which we just paid our taxes in December. And you'll see that I have a graph at the top, and then I have 2 tables down below that feed into the graph. And I think that you're going to understand a little bit better why I have concerns about the cost distribution formula, and it's not just me. Oh, sorry. So these are in alphabetical order in the graph and in the tables. And I used to make this real, to make this understandable to what a taxpayer has to pay. My property is worth about 200,000, is assessed at roughly 200,000. So down in the tables, you'll see that these mirror each other. The test assessed value at 200,000, which, by the way, when I crunched the numbers on Brookfield's assessing database, is just a little bit over the average assessed value in Brookfield, which is about 189,000. Under this scenario, I changed the formula from 25% ADM to 100%, the 25-75% split that we currently have, to 100% equalized valuation. School districts are, to my knowledge, the only political subdivision structure in the state of New Hampshire which does not use equalized valuation to fully distribute cost amongst communities. So looking at 100% equalized valuation, I would be paying, instead of $33.82 per student in my town, I would be paying for the same number of students under equalized valuation, $20.88, a drop of over a third. In Effingham, the cost would drop almost 67%, from $15.49 to $5.25 per student, and on and on. I'm not going to read through the whole graph. Now, I will say that the one set of numbers that I am unfamiliar, that I do not know whether they would change or not, and I footnoted the table at the bottom. I don't know whether or not the state grants would change under 100% EV. I used the exact same grants. The only variable between these two tables is the net cost of distribution, or the local tax burden on each community. And as you can see in the far lower right-hand corner, in looking at the sample changes, the change in the tax for me, for my property at about 200,000, would be just over $1,000 a year. In Effingham, it's over $1,700 a year. In Ossipee, almost $1,100 a year. In New Durham, $1,100 a year. Ossipee would be just over $1,100. Tuftonboro, a taxpayer with a house or property similarly assessed at $200,000, would be paying more, $742 more. And in Wolfboro, again, with a similarly assessed valued property, a Wolfboro taxpayer would be paying $438 more. If you look at the graph, those dollar numbers, it's really dramatic. How what people tend to call property poor towns would be impacted tremendously, particularly Effingham, Brookfield, and a modest impact in Wolfboro, and I'm sorry, Jack, there would be more of an impact in Tuftonboro. I wanted.
Diane, I don't want to hold you up, but this is not part of the subject for tonight, actually.
The subject of tonight was the budget, the budget.
Creation of a budget committee.
The budget committee and the tax cap.
And I understand this is part of the process, but I think you've gone on.
I am done. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was.
Any other questions so far on the two warrant articles that we're here to discuss? Yes.
I'm Rick Surratt. I'm a selectman from Brookfield, and I am opposed to both warrant articles in any form. A lot of the people in Brookfield that I represent are opposed. I was at a large gathering Saturday night, and I was told that they were opposed to warrant articles in any form. In addition, the people that I was talking with, they come to Brookfield to have their children go to these schools. And the taxes, they're high since I've been in Brookfield, but most of the population coming in to attend these schools say they'll gladly pay these taxes for what they get. So I just wanted to let that be known. And I'm a candidate for the school board this year at large. And if elected, I'll be representing these families and the parents, the children, and the district, and the quality of the schools that the board helps provide.
The other thing, for the people that were not able to make it to the deliberative session, the other items that you're going to be voting on in March, there are 3 collective bargaining agreements that we came up with. One for the teachers, one for the support staff, and one for the administrators. Part of the focus this year was to try to save some money on our health insurance plans. And we are changing our health insurance for all employees to what's called a consumer-driven plan. It's a yellow with choice, which probably doesn't mean anything to you, but it is a different type of, slightly different type of health insurance plan. Each group is going to be paying part of their premiums, which certainly helps to offset the amount that they're going to be paying for their premiums. We also negotiated wage changes or increases that would not put anybody underwater. So if they have to pay a certain amount out of pocket to cover their premiums, they're getting increases to at least cover that, so they're not going falling behind each year. So that's 3 of the warrant articles that are on there. There are also 3 warrant articles that follow the collective bargaining agreements. Should one of the collective bargaining agreements fail, the next article gives the board the ability to reopen negotiations and come back to the taxpayers with a new collective bargaining agreement. Those are null and void if the bargaining agreements do pass during the regular election anyway. One of the other articles is the $60,000 that we've asked for the last 5 years for the replacement of the turf field. That $60,000 comes basically from the undesignated fund balance that Diane was talking about. If there's money left over at the end of the year, that goes into a reserve account, and the replacement of the turf field is estimated, the lifespan is estimated to be 10 to 12 years. The replacement cost is between $700,000 and $750,000. If we stay on track for the $60,000 per year, when the field needs to be replaced, we'll have the money to do it without asking the taxpayers for additional funding for that replacement. So that's, to me, a very wise thing to continue to do. The other warrant article besides the budget that's on there is the $200,000 maintenance warrant article that we've had on the ballot for the last, 10, 12, 15 years probably. We identify anywhere from $400,000 to $500,000 worth of projects that need to be done. New boilers, roof replacements, different things that have to be done around the district that are not part of the regular general everyday maintenance. And we use these funds, we prioritize the projects that need to be done. We do as many of them as we can each year. We come up with a new list, and the voters have been very supportive of spending that $200,000 each year to take care of those necessary things to protect our assets that we have in this district. I believe the $200,000, if I'm not mistaken, is like spending roughly $400 a year on maintaining your own house. So it's a very reasonable investment to take care of the assets that we have in the school district. So those are the basic warrant articles that are there. In answer to the undesignated fund balance, the ability to help spikes in tax rates may or may not be an appropriate end result because of the funding formula the way it is now. The individual towns are going to be affected by the number of students that they have in their town. If there's some new construction that goes on in their town and their property values go up, their tax rate's going to go up. Some towns that may not need the relief might get more relief based on the funding formula and the way things happen around a particular town. Some taxes have gone up because the student population has gone up. I'd hate to sit here and say, don't invite any families into town if they're going to have kids because it's going to increase your taxes. That's counterproductive for what we're trying to accomplish here. So I certainly understand that some communities are affected by increases in student population. Some towns are having some new construction done. That all plays out in the whole process of putting together a budget and where this money comes from. Over the years, again, I'm a firm believer in giving the money back to the taxpayers who gave it to us to start with. If we didn't need to spend it, give it back. And in 2010, 2011, we returned $1,261,000. Following year, just shy of 1.1 million. The next year, 1.9 million. Year after, $2 million. It was one year that we were able to return $2.8 million to the taxpayers for various reasons. Additional revenue coming in, not having to expend as much money as needed. And then there was 1.6 million, 1.1 million this past year was $737,000. And in the proposed budget, this year actually, the projected is only about $560,000. So last year, we tried to really reduce our budget last year and squeeze as much as we can, and that's where the numbers came in at this point in time. That's our projection. I'm a firm believer in giving the money back to the taxpayers who gave it to us. If we didn't have to spend it, give it back to the taxpayers. The state does allow us to keep 2.5% of our budget as a reserve. But again, any one year that we keep that reserve, that first year we keep the reserve, the taxes are going to go up because we're not going to return that $1 million or whatever it is to the taxpayers. So that first year could be a hit. Maybe if we have a really, really low budget some year and we don't have the increase, that might be an opportunity, but I don't see that happening anytime soon. So, any other questions? Yes?
How does the number of homeschool
Kids, or how is that tracked, or how does that affect the budget?
The homeschooling.
And I asked this completely ignorant of it. I don't.
Homeschooling is very difficult. We used to be able to track homeschoolers a lot better than we can now. The homeschooling families used to have to give a curriculum basically to be looked at and sort of approved by the school district so we knew how many kids were out there. The State Department of Education took that ability away, so they no longer have to produce a curriculum for us to look at and to approve for homeschooling. So there's very little control on that at this point in time.
How do you track?
We don't.
Yeah,
You don't track kids at homeschool?
We used to, not anymore.
Yeah, Kathy,
I mean, it's from a curriculum, I mean, just track.
In terms of, we keep general numbers, but those numbers really don't tell us a whole lot because people really don't need to be accountable to the school district in the way they used to. And Kathy, I don't know in terms of funding if you've received anything from the Department of Ed, because there is some provision in the law that homeschool families are entitled to a certain amount of money, and the Department of Ed tracks that and lets us know.
I haven't seen that.
So right now that has no impact.
No impact on our budget.
Right.
Are homeschoolers entitled to a certain amount of money from the district or from the state or from anybody, or that's not a way? I guess I'm not saying because I think families should be accountable necessarily to the school. I'm curious how many kids are out there. I thought somebody said we had 40 kids homeschooled in Effingham, and I was like,
We used to have
40
on
kids in
average
Effingham?
About 100 to 110 homeschoolers that we were responsible for. We tracked them. The state took that requirement away from us, basically. And so the district still invites homeschoolers to, if we're going to have a trip going down to Boston to a museum, they're welcome to go. If they want to participate in sports, they can apply and be part of our sports teams. We do what we can to support them, but as far as accountability, we don't have any right now.
They are supposed to let us know, they are supposed to submit a letter, and they are supposed to keep track of the progress of their students, but we're not allowed to see that progress, so it's kind of meaningless. And if homeschool students don't show up at our door, we have no way of knowing that they're out there. So we rely on them to come to us, because that's what they're required to do to be legitimate homeschoolers, but there are homeschoolers out there that we wouldn't necessarily know about.
so does it affects, I mean, if we had 40 kids going to school or not going to school, that affects what? That affects these calculations, right?
That definitely affects them.
Well, yeah, it affects the overall enrollment, for sure.
You're not, the lists we get, so school board members get lists per town, and you're supposed to kind of go through and verify. Those lists don't include homeschoolers. They only include students who are enrolled in a specific school. So if all of a sudden, if there were 40 homeschoolers in Effingham, and they suddenly decided to enroll in school, then you would be paying for a lot more additional pupils as a town reflected in your tax rate. Does that make sense?
Right.
Right.
They're not on the radar.
Right,
But if they showed up at school, they would be. Right. That.
The selectmen, 2 years ago, we received a letter from the school district listing every student from your town that you're paying for.
Well,
And
you
of course,
probably remember, Teresa.
I
from
do,
the-
vaguely.
Yeah, yeah,
I never included into homeschoolers.
yeah.
Yeah,
not
so
in there.
homeschoolers wouldn't be on that list.
Registered.
Because they're not registered, those are registered students, those are the ones who are
And
sitting in
that's
classrooms
why
here.
the selectmen and school board look through that list to make sure that the students that are going to the certain schools are actually assigned to the correct town, because that particular town gets the bill for them.
Yes, ma'am.
So the answer to this question is that homeschooled children do not affect the current budget.
Correct, there's no direct effect on.
Thank you.
Correct.
No, they just would if they decided next year to go to the great school that we have. Thank you all. Thank you.
Anyone else? Somebody said that, but that's okay. Okay, one of the things that I would like to say, I know a lot of you couldn't make it to the deliberative session. You will get some stuff in the mail as far as the budget and the warrant articles that you're going to be voting on. But if you have any questions at all, our numbers are published. Our emails are available. If you have any questions, give us a call. All right? That's what we're here for. We're here to answer whatever questions you have. We'll be more than happy to talk to you about anything. So, again, look our numbers up. Our emails are published, and we're happy to fill you in on anything we can. Okay. Okay, if there's no other questions, I'd entertain a motion to go into into non-public under RSA 91A, semicolon 3, paragraph 2, for student personnel or legal matters.
So moved.
Okay, it's moved and seconded. Tim?
Yes.
Bridget?
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
Dr. Jim?
Yes.
Ernie?
Yes.
Yes. Stacy? Yes. Amen. Thank you. We're in non-public.